Hello everyone. Time to get ready to do some fractions. We're going to be exploring and comparing. And I know sometimes as soon as we hear the word fractions we kind of freak out, but I'm hoping after this lesson you will feel much more confident about your knowledge of fractions. Okay, first things first, let's start with a definition of fraction. So it's simple. A fraction is a number that names part of a whole or part of a group. So we've been dealing with whole numbers like the number 1 or the number 2 or the number 3. And by definition, a whole number is any number that does not have a fraction. So here are some examples of fractions. Here's 2/3, 2/8, 5/6, 1/4, right? 3/8 over here. Those are fractions. They are a part of a whole. So if we were meeting together, I love to teach kids fractions using food. Why? Because everyone loves it and they know they get to eat it when they're done. So let's pretend that this sweet and salty peanut granola bar, they're chewy and they're delicious, guys. Let's pretend you absolutely love it. Let's say that you did not eat breakfast and you're at school and you are so hungry. If I asked you this question, how much of this granola bar would you like? Would you like 1/4 or 1/6? What would you say? 1/4 or 1/6? So oftentimes, here's the answer I get, 1/6. And they say that because 6 is greater than 4. But let's look at what happens. These are 2 of those granola bars. One is cut into 6. This one's cut into 6. And this one is cut into 4ths. So if I were to give you 1/6, this is the size you would get. But if you had chosen 1/4, this is the size you would get. What do you notice about the sizes of 1/6 and 1/4? I'm sure you see it. 1/4 is larger than 1/6. Let's look at it from a little bit different angle in terms of the definition. We said that it is a number that names parts of a whole. The parts mean the numerator, and of a whole, the whole is the denominator, and the denominator is how many sections. That's a little bit too big. Let me erase a little bit of that. The denominator tells us how many pieces we divided this whole. This is a whole granola bar. We divided it into 6 pieces. So the bottom is the whole amount. The top is the parts. What we see here are 6 parts. So if you had been the person that had chosen 1/6, you would have gotten 1 out of the 6 pieces. This is the whole amount. This is the part that you would have gotten. Let's say that you were being very generous and you decided to tell your friend, you know what? I'm going to give you 3/6. They're going to get 3 out of the 6 pieces. Who would have had the most? You or your friend? Who would have eaten the most pieces? Well, let's look at it. Your piece was 1/6. Your friend's piece was 3/6. Your friend got considerably more than you did. So if you wanted to write it in terms of, in comparing them, you would say that 1/6 is less than 3/6. So let's just look at this for a minute. Notice that the denominators are the same. And that means that they were divided equally. It's like having two candy bars and both of them have been divided into 6. So to see which person gets the most, you just have to look to see which numerator is higher, right? If someone has 3/6, they clearly, as we see up here, they clearly have more than someone who only has 1/6. So if the denominators are the same, you just have to see who has the larger numerator to see who has the most. But let's look at comparing fractions with a different denominator. Going back to this picture here, we have this fraction at the top that was divided into 6, and then we have this fraction at the bottom which was divided into 4ths. The whole thing for the 4ths is 4 out of 4. That equals 1 whole, right? Because if you eat all 4 pieces, you ate the whole granola bar. At the top, 6 out of 6 equals 1 whole. That equals 1 because you would be getting all 6 parts of the 6 pieces that you divided into, right? The whole thing is the bottom. Remember? Parts over whole. You got all 6 out of the 6, so you got 1 whole. Likewise, at the bottom, if you ate all 4 pieces out of the 4, if you ate all 4 pieces out of the 4 pieces that you divided it into, you have the whole. But let's look at it in terms of comparing sixths, with 4ths. Okay, here we have the 6 at the top, 4ths at the bottom. Let's say that you tell your friend, I'm going to give you 4/6, and I'm going to eat 3/4. Kind of hard to see, isn't it? Let me try a different color. Okay, that's a little bit better. So if your friend gets 4/6, your friend is going to get all of this, 4/6. Okay, but if you are eating 3/4 of another one, you get all of this. And this is just like your fraction strips. If you had lined up your fraction strips together, you would see that 3/4 is greater than 4/6, right? You get more of the candy bar. So that's why we had you make those fraction strips, so that you can physically look at it and see which is larger. So we would say that 4/6 is less than 3/4. All right, and I want to look at one more comparison with you. Let's compare 2/4 with 2/6. You know, I'm going to use a lighter color. Okay, that's better. So looking at the top, I have 2/4, and I'm going to compare it to 2/6. Just looking at the picture visually, you can see that 2/6 is smaller than 2/4, right? Look how far out we come here with 2/4, and then look at this short distance here with 2/4. So, I'm sorry, with 2/6. So we would say that 2/4 is greater than 2/6. And why is that? because the denominator, the smaller the denominator, the bigger the pieces, right? Because it's cut up into fewer pieces. The smaller the denominator, the larger the denominator, the smaller the pieces get, because you're cutting that same whole into more pieces. So when you're dealing with fractions, it's a little bit different. Actually, it's quite a bit different than dealing with whole numbers. And the final takeaway I think I want you to get from this is this part right here. It's what a fraction is, which is parts of a whole. The parts of a whole. Parts of a whole, parts of a whole, parts of a whole. What do I want you to remember? Parts of a whole. Because that's exactly how you write a fraction. You write it as parts. So how many parts you get? This represents the whole amount. Parts of a whole. 1/3. 1/6. 1 is the parts that you got. And it was out of 6. This was the whole amount. Your friend out of 6 got 3. Parts of a whole. That makes me wonder, if my friend had 3 parts and I had 1 part, what would be left over? Looks like 2 parts. 2 out of 6. You know what? We'll save that for another lesson. All right, guys, I'll leave you with a joke. It says here, to show you how well I understand fractions, I only did half of my homework. Don't be that kid, guys. Get all your work done. All right, hope you have a great day. I will see you in the next video.